It's you. Oh, it's me.
Right, here we are at Duggie Fields' apartment in Earls. Duggie, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Duggie Fields.
And I'm Princess Julia.
I moved in here.
17.
Yeah, I moved in here Christmas of 1968. So actually more.
Oh my God!
So I lived with a couple of the Pink Floyd in a flat in Cromwell Road, now being demolished and it's a hotel instead. But it was notorious in its day. We all had no money when we lived there, but I still remember getting taxis. And one could get into a taxi and say 101, and the taxi driver would say Cromwell Road, because they would look at us and they'd know where we came from, because we all looked so unlike the majority of people.
So that was
but it was a building that had 2 flats where there were groups of like-minded people.
Including the Pink Floyd.
Including some of the Pink Floyd, not all of them, just 2 of them. And but they used to rehearse in the flat on the top floor. We had a 2-story flat, and they would rehearse there, and people would do light shows over there when light shows were first being thought of. It was totally experimental, as was early Floyd. Totally experimental.
So that was sort of like 67, 68?
That was probably 66, 67.
No!
Yes.
Wow!
And
swinging 60s!
Oh, I have an earlier swing. Let me tell you earlier swing in the 60s. Then. Okay.
Really? When did you come to... I don't know all this.
All right, so I start off in a small village, right? That's my first 10 years, 11 years, spent in a village that had main road with houses on one side and a field on the other side. And my parents had a chemist shop and we lived above the shop. But the little village was in the middle of an army base, in the middle of Boscombe Down, Salisbury Plain. So we had soldiers, tanks going past the front door. So it was a very curious, it was at the end of the railway line to London as well. And I knew my family had come from London, and we had these exotic relatives who'd come and visit us who weren't like the villagers. Then we moved to a small town nearby called Andover. I had 5 years there, then 2 years in Boreham Wood. You know Boreham Wood?
Yeah.
Yes, so where they make Big Brother, you know.
Yeah.
That baying crowd in Big Brother was on the street in Boreham Wood when I was 15.
Wow.
And I'm not so sure about this. But I had a cousin who's the same age who lived in Hampstead. And she started taking me places in London. When I was still at school, she took me to a jazz club in Leicester Square. And I started catching the train in and going there on my own. So my first clubbing, I was 16, going 16, I think.
Yeah.
And the club started putting on unknown bands. They had a rhythm and blues night with unknown bands, which was the Rolling Stones. So I was at school, coming on the train to see the Stones with maybe 50 or 100 people only. You know what small clubs are like.
Yeah, and I mean, even from my clubbing days, you know, I mean, they can't,
not much different to Billy's.
There weren't many people in London, really. It was really quite sort of empty after a certain time.
Yes.
I mean, it was desolate.
I mean, I could go see the Stones and catch the last train back to Boreham Wood. And go to school the next day. Yeah.
And that would be in like 1962,
63. They hadn't made records then. They weren't the biggest band in the world. I thought they were great. I was going back to school to say, you've got to come and see this band.
Wow,
it was the first place I started finding an identity, before I even went to architecture school. Then when I went to architecture school, so by then I'd sort of been going to see The Who before they'd made records. I met Roger Daltrey, and I have a whole, it's curious, because I lived in a very white world in the country. I never met anyone black until I was 16, 17, coming to London, to Hampstead. And it was like, oh, very strange. And the first black man I ever met was Howling Wolf. Can you imagine that? First black man I ever shook hands with, and it was like this great towering, but I knew who he was too.
Yeah.
I had his music because I was working in a record shop. And my cousin had this job in Hampstead and she didn't want to keep it, but she didn't want to leave them in the lurch. So I took her job, and the record shop only sold the top 10. till I started, and I changed that. I chose what they did sell. I quadrupled their takings within weeks, and I'd play records that would stop the traffic, because you didn't hear new music then. You didn't have... It's so easy to hear music now. Then, working in the shop, one got a printed list of the week's releases of all the record companies, and it just filled 2 sides of paper. That was it. We never heard them, but I'd learned to read the list and have a guess at what might be interesting, and just buy one for the shop. And if I liked it and played it, I could sell it if it was good. You know, and I started drawing people to the place because of they liked what I was playing.
I mean, you could have your career could have gone off on another sort of diversion, really. You could have been in the music business.
I always painted. But see, now I do make music as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once I got digital, but so wait a minute. So let's go back a bit. So I used to choose the music to play. I used to have a big record collection.
Yeah.
When the Floyd were rehearsing at home, I would put on rhythm and blues as loud as I could on my record player, thinking, "Get some rhythm, please." You know, I don't know whether they ever heard it, but I thought, you know. And then, you know, one of my friends went and joined T-Rex at the height of their popularity. Mickey Finn. I'd known Mickey for years, so suddenly I was sort of with Mark and Mickey. Oh, Mickey was a beauty.
Yeah, when he was young.
Yes. Yes. Before he got ravaged. So.
Did he get ravaged? I don't know.
Yes, he did. Yeah, very handsome man, a lovely man. Very, fond memories.
He was on the bongos, I think.
Yes.
At the side. Wow. I think we'll start at what you're doing lately.
I have taken photographs before, but I've never enjoyed owning a camera, taking a camera. So I've loved telephones though. I've always loved chatting on the phone. I used to chat for hours on the phone while I painted. Even in the days when you had to hold a handset like this with your ear and sort of paint like this. Well, once I discovered earpieces, and then once I discovered mobile phones that had a good camera, it was with me the whole time. So I started just taking pictures just around the corner, literally.
How long has the process been?
I've been taking the mobile photos now for 4 or 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And the collection in the book itself has, I think it's 850 photos, which took a lot of editing and a lot of layout, and each photo has had some processing. I take them into Camera Raw, and then I take them into Photoshop. And sometimes they're pretty straight as I've seen them. Sometimes I heighten the colour, sometimes I have to sharpen the focus. Occasionally my sense of order makes me want to make things more parallel, so I can distort the picture plane to make a more parallel image. My paintings always have horizontal and vertical lines. They're very constructivist, mirroring the picture surface, and I tend to apply that feeling to the photographs as well. But so I was always painting while that went on.
Yeah.
And when I got digital, when I started experimenting, then I've started, the last sort of 10 years, I've started doing the odd sound piece, should we call them. Yes.
Yeah, it's another discipline, isn't it, to experiment with.
And I love music, you know.
Yeah.
And I started making answer phone machine tapes back in the 80s, and I realised people liked listening to my voice, and I liked making them, and then I started making things in the sort of late 90s, almost by chance. I was out one day and I met the Thompson twins at San Lorenzo, and I said, "What are you up to?" And they said, "Oh, we're producing now." And I had a friend who wasn't signed, and I said, "Would you like to produce someone else?" Thinking I could introduce him. And they said, "We'd love to make a record with you." I said, "No, that's not what I meant." And they said, "Well, think about it." And I was going off to New York the next day, and they said, "Well, try and write something while you're away." And I did. And I never managed to hook up with them. I think they went back. They were producing someone else when I got back, then they left the country. But so I'd got a germ seeded, and from there I started. And then I thought, teach yourself. So I've taught myself a bit softly. The first 2 tracks I made with producers. All the rest, which is over 20 tracks, I've done on my own. literally done on my own. So I've done all the engineering, all the everything.
Multitasker.
It's hard work too,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a bit mind-boggling, and a
Yeah.
bit something like, well, I can't deal with this, I don't know what to do. So that sometimes
You sort of layer everything
yes.
up, don't you?
Yeah. Some I even did one track completely visually. I sampled a record blind. I bought a CD. I didn't listen to it. I just sampled bits of it, and I made a visual pattern with it. And then I listened to it afterwards. I did some things to it after. I can't even tell which track that is now, though. Interestingly enough. So you can be as conceptual as you like.
Yeah. Right, okay, here we are in Duggie's, this is Duggie's studio. It's fabulous, isn't it? I just love being surrounded by so much colour.
So do I.
Yeah,
that's very important.
Yeah, it's like really invigorating.
But actually, we're actually surrounded more by grey than anything.
Well,
I actually love grey too, pale grey. I like pale grey, black and white, but then colour with it, and saturated colour with it. Sort of primaries plus a bit of flesh, and a bit of shocking pink.
On that note, I'd like to ask you about your personal style, because, well, you are a style icon.
Okay. I remember when I was at school, when I was about 12, 13, being humiliated by one of the teachers for being so scruffy. And I was wearing hand-me-downs from a cousin that were too big, that I didn't like, but economics, you know, my family didn't have money, we made do in the 50s too. And then when I started having the ability to exercise choice, was sort of in my late teens, still at school, I started wearing sunglasses to school. Definitely not allowed.
On that note, I'd like to ask you about your personal style, because, well, you are a style icon.
Okay. I remember when I was at school, when I was about 12, 13, being humiliated by one of the teachers for being so scruffy. And I was wearing hand-me-downs from a cousin that were too big, that I didn't like, but economics, you know, my family didn't have money, we made do in the 50s too. And then when I started having the ability to exercise choice, was sort of in my late teens, still at school, I started wearing sunglasses to school. Definitely not allowed, and sandals. So when I was still at school, I always was the outsider. Culturally, I was the outsider in the little village because my parents had come from London. They were the family were exotic, the village wasn't. And when we moved to the small town, we were still outsiders. Jewish in a non-Jewish world, but we weren't Jewish because we went to church on Sunday, so we had a mixed cultural upbringing, and I didn't identify with anyone. So I started, I think I vaguely heard about beatniks. And I heard about, I wore sandals at school. I wore sunglasses because I got migraine and I thought the light, so they let me wear them, but they weren't happy about it. As soon as I knew I was leaving, I lost my school cap. I'm not buying another one because I'm leaving. And my family moved and left me on my own in the country at age 15. And
It's kind of weird.
I refused to come.
I see.
They'd gone to Boreham Wood. I took one look and thought, I don't want to go there. But also, I made the right choice for my education because the school in the country was so much better. And I had a miserable year living in different digs with none of my possessions. But then I came to Boreham Wood and discovered mods at one end of the street and rockers at the other, and both lots threatened me because I didn't fit in. And then my cousin Judy, who I'd been same age, and we'd been close from growing up always, and we're still close. She'd been in London, I'd been in the country. She had this job in Hampstead, she left, I took the job. And then in Hampstead I started discovering hip people. Hip, the word. Not hippies, before hippie, which was a pejorative word, but hipsters in Hampstead.
Oh, hipsters in Hampstead, the original hipsters.
Yes.
Not like our Shoreditch ones.
No. And I thought these people are really cool.
Yeah.
And my shop became party central on Saturday night. People would ring me in with where there were parties, and I would ring other people, so there would be cars full of, I don't know who, cruising around to parties that would be in Hampstead or down in the King's Road. There was this tie-up between the two areas of a little happening scene in London. Then, when I left home, I went to architecture school. The person who spoke to me first at architecture school came to me and said, "I'm so disappointed because I thought everybody would look like you." And nice approach, and we ended up sharing a flat with other people from the college, but he got his sister to sign the lease because we couldn't afford it. His sister was Alice Pollock. Alice Pollock, who was Quorum, who had the trendiest clothes shop in London, that later employed Ozzie Clarke when he was fresh out of the Royal College. So suddenly I was surrounded by all these gorgeous models and the trendiest place in the King's Road. But my Saturday assistant in Hampstead also ended up being Granny Dick's trip on the King's Road. So there was, and I ended up living just off the King's Road too, and then I went to Chelsea Art School, which was just off the King's Road. So the King's Road was my stamping ground, as it were. And it was before London became the tourist magnet, when it was just starting to happen. The media were writing about all the beautiful people on the King's Road. And you did see visions on the King's Road, definitely. And I would see people like Amanda Lear, but I saw Amanda Lear when she was Peggy Doswell on the King's Road, before her modelling career took off when she'd first come to London. I didn't know her at that point. But, so...
Can I just ask you,
yes.
What was your style like in the 60s?
Well, I started, when I was at school even, somehow I don't know, because I tried sewing. I remembered making myself a pair of flares by letting things in, but I hated flares later on because they became too popular. But when I started trying to convert my trousers to flares, they didn't exist. When I'd been at school in the country, there was very little media. As well as hearing about hipsters, I read an article on modernists in Kingston, and I had this girlfriend at school who was just, I thought was the most stylish girl in the school, called Gina, and she was. And she had a sister I didn't think much of. Then they left the country before I did, and they ended up in Kingston. When I rediscovered them, the sister had become this incredible looking woman. And I went to a party there. There were all these guys with backcombed hair and hand-stick lips, wearing Cuban heel boots and velvet jackets, smoking joints. And I'd never seen anything like this in my life. Thought, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
So I started putting on makeup. It wasn't a sexual identity at all. It was a purely androgynous thing, and mostly straight guys at the time with backcombed hair. You must have seen early pictures of Rod Stewart as Rod the Mod.
Yeah.
It was a bit similar to that look, but it was very much an art school look. And it was before I went to art school. When I got to art school, nobody looked like that. That look was over. And when I got to the Chelsea Art School, I already knew the interesting people before I went to the college. I thought there would be a lot more. I got there weren't. But on the King's Road, there was this vibrant scene. And Alice, who was Quorum, I could walk into Quorum, and Alice would say, "Duggie, why don't you try this on? Why don't you try this on?" And there was no money involved. It would just be she would give me something to wear. And I didn't think there was anything unusual about that, I'm afraid. It was nice. I just thought that's what happened. But we were also a group who would go out to restaurants with no money and kind of expect that someone would pay the bill somehow. And it would happen. There was one restaurant we used to go to regularly that they used to say, just pay us when you can, or or there'd be some Arab prince sitting there who would pick up the tab.
And who was in your group? Who was your
At this point, Mickey Finn would have been one of them. And various friends, the odd friend I made at architecture school, people around Granny's and around Quorum. And above Quorum there was the English Boy Model Agency, which was the first sort of hip male model agency. And English Boy also had women, and they morphed into Models One. So that was where Models One first started. And Shalita was the person who was there, and I was completely in awe of Shalita. And she was, I'd never seen, do you know her?
Yeah.
She was the most amazing.
I did meet her, yeah.
But you didn't meet her in her day. You
No,
met her after the disastrous decay that she had.
Well, she still looks amazing.
She was amazing, but more amazing when I first met her. You know, more, well, I just thought I'd never seen anyone like her. You know, but she also knew everybody, and the idea that we just to go to a club and just the minute they saw Shalita, it was come in. You know, right, and so that opened up a whole world for me. So I would go to college in a three-piece black velvet suit. And I remember one of the models saying to me, "Oh, you're the rich one, aren't you?" I'm living on, like, I was like, in the evening, do I buy 10 cigarettes or do I buy food? I had so little money, I was walking around with shoes with holes in my soles, with just one pair of shoes. But somehow, and clothes were always an important part of self-definition in the group of people I lived with too. Everyone used to dress up and change their appearance continuously. And I would dress in primary colours and go and paint primary colours in college the same day. I got more fixed. I got this look in the mid-70s. I don't know quite how it evolved. The curl took a little sort of while before it came from the side to the front. These used to be lines that went up before they shrunk down. I used to have lines on my cheek at one point. So it's a look that's ossified over time. And I don't really think about it anymore. I put these on and pull that down when I finish shaving in the morning. I don't like to be unshaved because I don't like the way it feels. I do it even if I'm not going out, even if no one's coming around. The only time I don't do the eyebrows is when I'm going on a beach, which is very rare. And I know it's going to not last, so it seems pointless. I'm Duggie Fields.